You knew Cookies was in deep water when he uttered certain words yesterday, and Roberto did not disappoint. All right, Thursday, gorgeous day here in Detroit. We got a lot of ground to cover, and I'll get to the Lions at 3, but I have to do this, and I ask you as my audience to forgive me if I'm not making a wise choice, but can you indulge me for a moment as I bring up the Tigers? Can I do that? Because I have a question, and I feel like it's obvious, but yet still a bit taboo in this town. You know, when am I allowed to rip AJ Hinch amongst the public? Like, when are we allowed to start reviewing whether he's anywhere near what we thought he was? Look, no one's going to tell you it's a good team. And this isn't me doing a radio thing where it's like, well, what do you expect, 90 wins? No, not at all. I understand. I'm keenly aware of the situation they're in. But there's one thing where you're bad. There's another if you're embarrassing. And last night's game, which I'm sure 90% of Metro Detroit didn't watch, hence the danger of me bringing this up, it's just Little League out there. It's completely Little League. The base running gaffes, the low quality at bats, some of the decisions AJ is making, such as Javi Baez at cleanup, shout out 0 for 4 with a K. We're now 4 for 40 on the year. Not using Lang for 6 outs and instead putting out some guy named Bobby Wintergreen as your closer. And I'm like, wait, who's this guy? And then you look and you're like, wow, hasn't pitched in the majors since 2019. Where was he? California Penal League? I mean, it's like Major League. You've got Vierling getting thrown out, running to second, not sliding because he's more concerned that his hat's going to fall off. We've got guys getting thrown out at third where the ball is hit right in front of them. We're missing cutoff guys. And it all comes back to the manager. If AJ Hinch is supposedly an elite manager, and I'm guilty of this in the past, I've said it. But if he's an elite manager, while he can't make this a 90-win team, I'm sorry, there comes a point he is responsible for the actions of his players. And right now, look, he can get annoyed in the postgame, which he did, but what are we doing? These lineups he's rolling out, it doesn't make any sense. Can we just bench Baez or move him down? On the base paths, this team is a complete disaster. They make more mental errors than any other team I watch. And I'm sorry, AJ Hinch has to be brought under some scrutiny here. Because for the life of me, if your team's rebuilding, but you're playing really hard, and you're making sense with the lineups. If I'm seeing a new ideology, right? I'm seeing, hey, Scotty Harris says we want to own the strike zone. And now I see a team that's attempting to work the count. A team that doesn't flail wildly. A team that advances runners. A team that defensively is doing the right things. Guys, that's one thing. But the Tigers aren't just bad. They're a clown show. They are. And I just, for a long time, I admit it. My default was, well, AJ's been dealt a pretty rotten hand here, but he's still good. I'm starting to question it. I really am. And I'm not going to take the cheap road and be like, well, he's licking the stamp because he knows he's out of here at the end of the year. I'm not doing that. That's not fair yet. And to his credit, he was pretty amped up in the postgame last night. He should be. That was a disaster. Now, for those of you that are going to call in and be like, Mike, who cares if they win 70 or 75 or 68, then you're not my target audience. Look, I don't care what you do for a living, but if you do things where you're failing but learning, I can work around that. Whether you're a radio host, a salesperson, in marketing, if you're in law, like if you fail but you're taking something from the failure and bettering yourself, That's the recipe to success. But if you fail and you take nothing from that failure and you keep doing the same dumb-ish, that's where I draw the line. I can't do it. And with this Tigers team, guys, it is now years, plural, of low-quality at-bats. That has nothing to do with ability. It has everything to do with discipline. Look, Javi Baez makes $22 million a year. If you mean to tell me that Javi Baez has no ability to show an ounce of discipline at the plate, I'm going to call you a liar. I'm going to tell you you're wrong. He's making a choice to do what he does. And this team makes a choice to allow it. Like, I grew up in a different era of baseball. But one of my favorite players growing up was Don Mattingly. Very similar to Joe Mauer in this regard, okay? A little more modern player. Do you know what Joe Mauer and Don Mattingly barely ever did? Ever. Swing at first pitch. You just take it. Now, there'd be times the pitcher would throw a meatball, and you'd go, what the F are you doing? But more times than not, you'd be shocked that you're starting out and the count's 1-0. They make a choice to allow Javi to swing away. They make a choice. I don't want to hear it. And as long as Javi Baez is allowed to produce garbage at bats, complete lack of professionalism, and starting next year he'll be the team's highest paid player, then what hope do you have for the kids? Seriously. And it goes well beyond Torque and Green. But what Veerling did last night, I don't know that I've seen. And whether it was a straight steal or a hit and run, DGAF. If he makes any effort to slide, he's safe. If he ignores the fact that his helmet's going to fly off, he's safe. He got thrown out on something completely inexplicable. We're missing cutoff men. We're getting thrown out at third with less than 2 outs. These are the fundamentals of baseball. And I'm not even doing the whole, you tell your children not to do this. Look, man, they're men, they're not machines. Mistakes are going to happen. But you know what I've become accustomed to with the Tigers? It's not just losing. It's not just being really bad. It's stupidity. That's what I watch on a nightly basis. It's stupidity. It's a lack of professionalism. And I always harp on how the Pistons have lost their identity about what it means to be a Detroit Piston. The Tigers are in the exact same spot because there is no standard to being a Detroit Tiger. There is no standard. There is nothing to live up to. And this is way beyond the Yankees and their ridiculous, rules about mustaches and haircuts. I'm talking about just a professionalism. We're going to be bad. We all know it, but that doesn't mean we have to be embarrassing. Play the game the right way.
See, Mike, here's the thing. Last night I was watching Little League mistakes, and then I turned my phone off and watched the Little League game that was going on in front of me, and they did not make those same mistakes. I should not be watching the Tigers, and they're making these mistakes.
They're not mistakes of talent. That's my problem.
And I think it's on AJ. I really believe it's on AJ. The base running errors, the not throwing to the cutoff men, that is basic one-on-one baseball stuff you learn as a kid. So the fact that they're not focused enough to make those mistakes,
right?
That's on AJ.
Right, and the things that aren't on AJ are as if I have a AAA pitcher who I need 150 innings out of, I understand he's going to have an elevated everything. He's going to be terrible. Now, if you're up there and giving away at bats, if you're up there and you're blowing through signs, you're missing signs, guys, that's on Hinch. That has nothing to do with talent. But you know what's become acceptable here in Detroit? Complete ineptitude. A complete lack of professionalism. And that game last night, I mean, it's morbid. You never lose that game. But they do all the things they can to lose games. Not on purpose. It's just because what's accepted. So my question is, at what point do you hold Hinch accountable? I mean, let's face it. If we're at the beginning of a rebuild anyways, why do I care about AJ Hinch any further? This is the rebuild of the rebuild. But if this guy is supposedly elite, I need to see a standard put in place here. A standard of professionalism, a standard of what you're going to do at the plate, in the field. And look, pitching is the toughest piece. If guys are bad, they're bad. And if you don't have a lot of good options, I can't go back to the Leland days and moan about, hey, you use this guy in this high leverage spot and not that guy. We can't even get to that point. But there's a lot that is under AJ's control. I mean, things like hitting Javi Baez cleanup, it's reprehensible. It really is. And look, if nobody wants to rap about it, so be it. But I have to do this now because here's what's going to happen by June or July. No one will care. No one. And it's sad, and it's the ultimate indictment, and if I were Chris Ilitch, I'd be mortified. No one's going to care about this product 50 games into the year. So the way I look at it is, you know what? We better do this stuff now. And it's timely, and it's the only non-football I'm going to do. But at the core, you're all sports fans. We are all sports fans. And I'm sorry. If you approached your job the way the Tigers approached theirs, you'd be fired. You'd be viewed as a clown in your office, and you'd be let go. And whether it was budget cuts or outright random firing, you'd be looking for new work. Because the Tigers do stupid stuff. Real stupid stuff on a nightly basis. And there's no one in charge right now. And if AJ is in charge, well, then it's on him. 248-539-9797. I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to talk about it a little bit. And if not, oh well, we'll move on.